Well, hello friends and welcome to Ask Zach. Have you ever been at a, some type of party or social gathering where they do an icebreaker question and inevitably one of them is, what's your favorite movie? And you have the guy that, say like Schindler's List or, some, heavy movie or some artsy film like they'll say Throne of Blood by Akira Kurosawa or some French filmmaker. And then, of course, you have people that are honest and will say things like Dirty Dancing. And when they get around to me, I say the Blues Brothers. And that's because the Blues Brothers was a really important, culturally significant, musically significant movie for me that I've probably seen 50 or more times. And I still enjoy watching it. And I think it's just a really well-made, lovable movie. It's a comedy musical, and I think it's really wonderful. And I recently read this book by Daniel DeVise on the Blues Brothers, and so today, going to talk about the Blues Brothers. Going to talk about the movie. Going to talk about its cultural significance and the impact that it had on artists and what it kind of means to me and a lot of others that I know. Also, we'll talk a little bit about gear, the guitars and stuff that Cropper and Duck Dunn and Matt Guitar Murphy use in the film. And and then maybe we'll end up with a little lesson, covering the Sweet Home Alabama lick that I played to open the show, originally, of course, played by Matt Guitar Murphy. So before we dive in, I just want to thank all my Patreon members that really keep the show going. And if you'd like to find out more or join them, check out the link in the description. All right, so let's kind of start off with kind of a little book report and kind of a little bit of history. So, this is, of course, The Blues Brothers by Daniel DeVise. And in it, you get, kind of the background that you would assume that you would get of John Belushi being from the Wheaton area outside of Chicago, growing up as kind of an Albanian immigrant. You have Aykroyd growing up in Canada, them coming together, working at Second City and National Lampoon, and then of course getting with Saturday Night Live and being the not ready for prime time players and all of the all the things they went through there, and where you get kind of the germ of the Blues Brothers is it starts with them. Aykroyd was already into the blues, but he kind of got John into it, and then they did this routine. Apparently, they had done a lot of bee skits on Saturday Night Live where they dressed up in bee costumes, and they were kind of tired of it. And the only way John, Belushi agreed to do it again was if they did a musical number, and they did "I'm a King Bee," and of course, you can find that clip, online of them doing that on Saturday Night Live, and that kind of started the bug. John started enjoying performing and singing, and of course, he also did his imitation of Joe Cocker with Joe Cocker and things of that ilk, and it kind of morphs into them starting to sit in with bands, and finally with them getting the idea for the Blues Brothers. The musical director for Saturday Night Live, Shore, he had a lot to do with it. Paul Schaefer did. Steve Jordan had a lot to do with it. And, they end up putting this band together and they perform on the show. At first they warm up the show, because I've been to Saturday Night Live. I was there years ago and got to watch the show go down. It was when I was working with Carrie Underwood. I got to go there and got to be there all week long, while they went through rehearsals and went through skits and stuff. So before Saturday Night Live, the show starts, they warm up the crowd with a lot of the cast members like singing and doing, kind of funny musical numbers and things like that. And so that's what the Blues Brothers did. at first, and then finally they got bumped up to playing a tune, in the actual show, and then they were able to parlay that into a record deal, and which is just hilarious. And they did this this run of live shows at out in LA, and they were able to record that, the live recordings, and they were able to turn it into an album. And then Dan Aykroyd starts writing this whole backstory on them, and it was like 300 plus pages. It was like the size of a phone book. And finally, they are able to convince Universal to make a movie, and it starts out at like a $5 million budget. It ends up ballooning to probably over 30, and and of course they get John Landis to direct it, and who none of these guys had a lot of experience. Belushi's biggest success was playing Bluto in Animal House. And so they, that's their biggest star in the film. Besides, of course, the other. We'll get to the other stars of the Blues Brothers in a moment. But they lovingly put together this film that, to me, the Blues Brothers is kind of a love note, if you will, to not only R&B, classic R&B music, soul music, but also it's a love letter to the city of Chicago. And really, the city of Chicago is another one of the stars of the film. I mean, they really painstakingly shot, all over the city, and showed all these wonderful, landmarks. And you get, all the stuff that happens in Daley Plaza, and all of the car chases and the car wrecks and all these amazing things. Yeah, and of course, you also get all the the one-liners that are throughout the film. You get we play both types, country and western, and chicken wire, and we're on a mission from God, and things like that. But I think the real lasting impact for a lot of people is that movie really boosted the careers of a lot of the artists that had cameos in the film. So it was a big boost to the careers of like Aretha Franklin and James Brown and Ray Charles and John Lee Hooker, because all of a sudden they were in what ended up being a summer blockbuster film, and it boosted their careers when they were kind of at lows. Aretha had such a wonderful time in the late 60s and up until about the mid 70s, but by the late 70s or 1980, when the Blues Brothers was released, her career was not in a great spot, and neither was James Brown. James Brown wasn't doing well. Neither one of them were having hits anymore. So it was a big boost to them, to their careers. One funny thing is that, of course, for me and for a lot of other people my age, probably, in their, kind of 40s and 50s, we grew up too late to have been exposed to the music of Calloway and Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles and all that, because we were born in the 70s and 80s. And so we missed that. And so the Blues Brothers gave us a chance to be exposed to their music in in the form of this comedy movie, and yet we were able to see these wonderful, wonderful performances by Ray Charles, and really from that dig into their catalog. And so I think the movie deserves accolades just for exposing a lot of kids to this wonderful music that they probably would not have been exposed to otherwise. So a funny thing that happened with me trying to do the same thing for my children was that I, of course, was 7 years old in 1980 when the Blues Brothers was released, so I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on cable, and I recorded it on VHS, And I watched it over and over and over and over again. And of course, that was illegal. But, you know, when my kids were born and they got to be, like, one was 7 and the other one was 9, I decided they were old enough to watch it. And so, of course, I thought, you know, I don't want to play them the old VHS tape that I've, you know, played over and over again and it's worn out. I'll go get a DVD, you know, from a store. And this is, of course, back in the day when you bought DVDs from the store. I think it was like at Barnes & Noble. So I buy the Blues Brothers, I put it in, and all of a sudden I hear all this foul language that I had never heard before. And what I didn't realize is that for 20 plus years, I had been watching the edited for television version of the Blues Brothers. And then here I was, you know, showing it to my 7 and 9-year-old kids, which was a little bit much, you know, for them. So we ended up, of course, watching it, you know, when they got a little bit older. But yeah, that was kind of a funny moment when I saw, you know, Aretha Franklin, you know, swearing and such. So yeah, I think that, you know, for a lot of us, the Blues Brothers was a way in which, you know, we were exposed to classic R&B music, and it made us dive deeper. We also got to see a lot of great, you know, music performed, and you got to see Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn and Matt Guitar Murphy play, and yeah, there's fantastic musical numbers and all sorts of great cameos. So let's kind of dive into gear here. So it's fun, you know, watching, you know, Cropper. You know, he mostly plays the frog guitar. So the frog was, we don't know I don't know the full story on this. Been trying to dig up as much as I could, but it originally was Jim Dickinson. So that's you know, Luther Dickinson's father, who's a kind of a very important Memphis, you know, artist, producer, and such. So Jim had this guitar, and it looks to be like an early to mid 50s Telecaster that has a frog inlay on the neck, and then it's been painted, you know, or kind of stained kind of a dark red. It has binding added to it, and then it has an extended pick guard, and it has a P90 in the neck. And it's a really, really cool looking guitar, and of course it sounds great in the movie, and that's what you see Cropper playing most of the time. He plays that with Murph and the Magic Tones. He plays that, you know, when they're playing at Bob's Country Bunker. He plays it, you know, at the end of the show. The only times where he doesn't play that guitar are, you know, at Ray's Music Exchange when they play Shake Your Tail Feathers. He plays a mid 70s Telecaster that he used quite a bit in other performances with the Blues Brothers, like on Saturday Night Live. And then there's also a 60s Esquire that he only uses for Minnie the Moocher, and which is an interesting, you know, choice. Of course, he's doing that kind of rhythmic thing, the kind of chuck sound and chunking sound, I should say. But yeah, he plays those 3 guitars throughout the film, and it looks like he's using a super reverb. Of course, Duck Dunn's playing that late 50s P bass that he would play throughout the 80s, and he'd also play it, you know, when he's touring with Clapton and you know, other acts. Then Matt Guitar Murphy, we're not, you know, I haven't been able to dig up much information about the SG he's playing, but it looks to be, you know, probably an SG special that's had, I mean, yeah, the headstock's white and it's got a metal pick guard, but then it's got humbuckers on it. So I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it looks to be, you know, something that's been repurposed or you know, had some mods done to it. But and it also looks like, you know, Matt Guitar Murphy's using a super reverb also. And, you know, one of the great things about it is that, you know, the film is also, you know, for us guitar lovers, I mean, it's like these beautiful guitars. Matt Guitar Murphy also plays a Guild hollow body during the Minnie the Moocher thing. And it looks like he's playing a Hamer guitar during the Ray's Music Exchange thing. But yeah. And it's what I was trying to say was it's fun in that you get to hear all these guitars, no pedals. So there's no pedals anywhere. And so this is also, you know, from that golden era, where of 1979, 1980, where it was kind of the tail end of, of it being pretty normal to see somebody plug, straight in to the amp, as it were. Yeah, the book is, I think for those that really want to dive deep that love the movie and really want to hear all the backstory, this is great. It's got a lot of information about, the struggles that went on, with Universal Studios and the execs there, the problems with the budget, the fact that you had a lot of not incredibly experienced guys working on the film. They didn't have a lot of experience. And also just the struggles they had, and that the film ended up being like 3 hours long, and they had to cut it down a lot, and John Landis wasn't happy with it because he had really paced it a certain way. Finding out that all those crashes and everything, those were all real. None of it was done with any type of miniatures or any type of special effects, as it were. So I mean, they really, one of the things that made the film so expensive was all the car crashes. I mean, they wrecked so many cars. They had so many Bluesmobiles. They had so many police cars that they had to wreck and fix and such. And of course, they did a number on Daly Plaza and had to replace plate glass windows and things like that. And yeah, so the book really gives you all that, and it gives you all the behind the scenes. And also, it's sad in that, really the Blues Brothers movie is where Belushi is really kind of sinking into his drug addiction, and he's getting really bad. And if you watch the film closely, and if you're really looking at Belushi, I mean, you can tell that his skin looks terrible. And the thing that really saves Belushi is the fact that he's wearing sunglasses and a dark suit the whole time. So you're not able to see just how bad his health is, and how he's really kind of sunk into a cocaine addiction. And it's sad in that. And of course, he dies not long after the film is released. And I guess he does make Neighbors and Continental Divide. But yeah. So that's kind of sad, hearing about John's descent into that. But it's a really great book, and if you want to do a deep dive on the Blues Brothers, I highly recommend it. Daniel DeVise, The Blues Brothers. So there you have it. Yeah, I love it. I love the Blues Brothers. Being critical, are John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd amazing performers? Well, I think they are great performers. I think they're not great singers. And so it's much more enjoyable to watch the film than it is to listen to the albums. I was listening to the albums recently, Briefcase Full of Blues and Made in America and the others. And yeah, I think they were smart to do live albums where, they could also have some banter and do some kind of funny things. But they were not, great singers, but they were great entertainers, and they were hilarious. They were comedians. They were actors, and they did a wonderful thing in spotlighting this wonderful musical style, giving it a second breath, exposing it to a bunch of kids that wouldn't have heard it otherwise, and spotlighting Chicago. I mean, it's really, again, the film is really a love letter to the city of Chicago, and what a boon that they were able to get permission from the mayor at the time, and that they were able to make that amazing film. So, all right, now a little lesson. There's not a lot of lead guitar in the movie. Of course, I'm sure it was probably one of the things they were, cutting out were, some of the solos and things like that. So you don't really get a lot of lead guitar. Now, of course, Matt Guitar Murphy was officially, hired on to be a hot lead guitar player. And so the biggest thing you get from him is the intro to, Sweet Home Chicago. And it's a fun little thing. And I'm just going to, play it here. I'm going to kind of slow it down some. You get this. So, of course, in the key of E, you're sliding up on the 12th fret on the B string and the 10th fret on the high E string, and you're going back and forth. Of course, this second part is on the the 9th fret on the high E string and the 10th fret on the B string. Then, of course, you have that kind of classic blues lick on the 7th fret and the 8th fret on the 7th fret on the high E and 8th fret on the B string. And then you get another classic blues, kind of turnaround. That's on the D and B strings, starting on the 9th fret, and then you're kind of rocking back and forth between your pick and finger. And I think Matt Guitar Murphy is hammering on that last part. And then you get this nice, nice kind of more sophisticated chord, not just a straight 7th. And that's just. So that's kind of going back and forth. On the A string, you're on the 6th fret. On the D string, you're on the 7th fret. On the G string, you're on the 6th fret. And on the B string, you're on the 7th fret. And then I just played some, kind of, E kind of, rhythm where I was climbing up the neck. And then on this big kind of E9 chord. Isn't that what that is? So you got the open low E string, you've got the A string on the 5th fret, you've got the D string on the 6th fret, you've got the G string on the 6th fret, and then you've got the B string on the 5th fret, and then you play the open E, so. All right, guys. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I hope if you haven't seen the Blues Brothers movie in a while, you will go stream it or put in the DVD, or maybe you have the old VHS and put it in and just enjoy it and think about the wonderful thing that movie is and was, and what it did for those artists and that music. And it's so funny and it's so good. And you know what? I'm going to do this anyway because we're on a mission from God. Bye-bye.